Hello. If you miss any of this, you can speak to housekeeping at the Mercure. I practiced it 5 times this morning. They have the Director's Cut extended edition, so I hope this goes well. So I'm talking about setting up some strategies for success when it comes to migration to S/4HANA and looking at what it takes to get a clean core going. So firstly, who are we? RevTrack, made by Revelation Software Concepts, founded in 1997. Software partner since 2002. 60,000 odd users, over 220 customers worldwide, and we're headquartered out of Melbourne, Australia. That's my accent there. So I'm the head of product and strategy, which is a fun role, of course. So setting the scene for the discussion, these are really the things we're hearing from our customer base. And I think that's a fair representation of most of the community at the moment, is these 3 things. It's how are we going to get our clean core? How are we getting across to S/4HANA, given some deadlines and a talent pool that is shrinking because they're committed to projects? And of course, how does SAP Cloud ALM fit into the strategy as we start doing this? So our take on the solution, of course, is a few things. Before your migration, start controlling your code. Okay, use micro adjustments to improve the code. Analysts are telling us about 40% of custom code will go across during a brownfield transformation. Start modernizing your S4 code as soon as possible. There's no reason to not do this today. It will improve the rate of success and the duration that it might take for that brownfield transformation to occur. During the migration, of course, you need to keep these systems in synchronization. You're running your legacy environments for a while, and of course, you're not ready to start using S4 immediately, but you need all the functionality to be kept in synchronization. Sometimes organizations take a staged approach to cutting over. You need to keep both environments in synchronization until you can pull away from the legacy systems completely. And then, of course, post-migration. Use smart techniques, wrappers, whatever it takes to start creating thresholds of code or acceptable code and ensure that you're moving towards a clean core environment. Okay? So, I'm going to talk about how we help specifically with this process. It's 3 main areas. We've got ABAP code control, automatic retrofitting, and of course, SAP Cloud ALM integration. So firstly, tight control of ABAP code before it leaves development. All right, there's an opportunity here to really take the reins nice and early, force sort of behaviors, puts thresholds in place for acceptable code that's coming through. And of course, you need the right tools, the right safety checks, and get sign-off for non-compliance, which will ultimately allow for the organization to start progressing in a controlled way. I'll also point out there's a good opportunity here for a cultural change, and I'll come back to that in a moment. The next, automatic retrofitting. Okay, RevTrack's been doing retrofitting. We call it cloning, but retrofitting we've been achieving for as long as I've been at the organization, 17 years we've been offering this for our customers. So we've got proprietary controls that allow for our end-to-end approach for change delivery to make sure that the retrofit works. Okay, successful retrofits are very, very important. You want the rate of successful retrofits to be as high as possible. When using the solution correctly, our customers, not for S4, that's different, but for generic projects and N+1 situations, they can reduce the manual application to just 2% with a 98% success rate for retrofit. And then, of course, we're looking to invest more in this community. Okay, Cloud ALM is the way. It makes sense. You should be getting all of your changes to S4. You've got these flashy new systems. Why wouldn't you have a perfect blueprint map sitting in Cloud ALM? Okay, as this gets more mature, the benefits of knowing exactly what's going on at a technical level inside of the S4 systems is going to be more and more beneficial. So we're making sure that our customers and any future customers have access to make sure that the visibility and traceability is being applied to SAP Cloud ALM. And we've got 3 approaches. I'm going to discuss each of these and tie them into these 3 points we discussed, okay? So approach 1, we're effectively appending the feature. We're taking all of the capabilities of the feature and we're sort of adding the things we do really well. We're focusing on creating high quality development capabilities before it goes back to the feature for final deployment. Approach number 2, we update the feature. So where the feature can't necessarily be used to drive, like retrofit, we make sure that anything that goes into the S4 systems will at least have traceability and some sort of a record. And we do that by simply updating the feature. Finally, our third approach is using the requirements. So straight off the requirement, we can, in theory, replace the feature. That's not necessarily the goal here, but certainly it's a possibility to run your change management straight off the requirement layer. So doing a double click, we'll talk about the ABAP code control and highlighting approach 1. So firstly, again, this culture adjustment here, all right? We've all been in organizations where the culture can be different, all right? We've got an opportunity when we modernize code at pace to determine what goes into the code, the quality and thresholds for acceptable code, okay? I would challenge organizations to ask themselves, who's actually impacting this culture at the moment? If it's past employees, if it's things that people did and you just keep using it the same way because that was the standard set 15, 20 years ago, that's impacting your culture right now. Partners, vendors, SIs, they come in for big projects, specific requirements. They build it in a way that might not even be consistent with the rest of the organization and how you're building out your custom code. So it is an opportunity to take control and reset the culture as well. In Melbourne, where I'm from, Australia, I should say, there's 2 major cities. It's Melbourne and Sydney. That's where most of the SAP shops operate from, and all the talent is in these 2 cities. So typically, people roll around from company to company, and they're changing the organization that they're working for quite quickly, and they're bringing whatever their culture is into that organization. By contrast, I know in Heidelberg, there's an organization where we speak to some of these people, they've been there for 40 years. They have a much tighter control over, because they don't move around from site to site, because in that city, that's the place to work for SAP. And that also drives cultural adjustments, because obviously when you have people that stick around, they're going to embed the culture. So internally, we started looking at some of the things we were doing. We brought an excellent engineer who's now our CTO into the organization, and he used to work for one of the big 4 consulting firms, and he was very excited, and he started going, I can't wait to work on software. And I went, what do you mean? He goes, what we do at these big 4 firms, we come in, we make a change, we keep our costs down, and we sort of let it go, and that's somebody else's problem now. But to have some software that we actually look after, and we can nurture the quality of the code, and make sure that it's constantly being improved and optimized so that we can then be safe when we deliver down the pipe. He looked forward to that, and I thought that was an interesting take. It's really helped us to mature the way we look at what we want to offer our customers as well. So the other thing we're doing, of course, we want to provide an environment that has safety checks in place, enable the developers as best as possible, keep them safe so that they know that they're building to a standard that everybody can be happy about, and the changes are effectively going to get down the pipe and deploy successfully to production. And the other thing we're really focusing on right now is optimizing the developer workspace. Let's jump into this. So the first approach, we've seen the feature. It's driven from the feature. You start the feature's life cycle. As it gets to in implementation, this is where RevTrack picks up and creates a workplace for the developers to operate. They'll be submitting their transports, functional consultants as well. Anybody who's making change to the system will be submitting them to RevTrack. And then we go through a workflow process through RevTrack, get the change into QA, and then submit the changes back to the feature for completion of deployment into the production instance. We're going to do a big double click on the code and developer controls and what we're offering in this. And again, don't miss that opportunity for cultural change. So this is one of those complicated slides. We're going to work through it a little bit. This is what we're offering with RevTrack, the checks, the features, the capabilities. A lot of this stuff is out of the box, and we're challenging ourselves to be able to deliver it as a self-install within 2 days to go live. There are certain things that will work out of the box. There are certain things that require maintenance, like upkeeping objects, things that should go to S4, things that shouldn't, maybe defining what sensitive objects are, things like this. They take a little bit more effort and ongoing maintenance, but time to value is very quick, of course. There's a few things that do require third-party tools, native SAP tooling, and then some of the Tricentis Solex products as well. So let's go through this. Firstly, RevTrack here is trying to fill the gap between in implementation and in testing. So while it's development in progress, we're capturing transports. There will be no rogue transports when you use RevTrack. Every transport will be associated with a feature, and it'll be associated with the RevTrack request where the developers and functional consultants are working. We provide the right insights, of course. locking for parallel development checks, critical and sensitive object checks. We provide the right workflows. If you want security, configuration, customization, workflows that work a little differently, require different approval types, we can direct the right workflow for the team and the right objects to those workflows. We also can provide change governance. Our policy is get the governance done up front. Why should changes that are not approved and are never going to be allowed to go to production be allowed to leave the development system? Okay, prevent all of that stuff, backlogging or messing up your QA environment. Get it pre-approved in the development system. Safety checks. When you empower the developers because they're given the right tools, they're going to give you better product. Okay, dependency analysis, make sure that they know if they're about to trigger a return code 8. Give them options about sequence and downgrade protection and a constant awareness if other people are working on common objects. Offer code and peer review, 4 eyes, 6 eyes, whatever it is, whether you need separate approvals from partners to say that they've done the job and then an internal review for your organization, this can all be built in, of course. Security checks, Onapsis and Security Bridge, shout out, they're great to work with. We have a few, certainly with Onapsis, a few operational integrations with some large organizations, and they don't allow unsecure change to leave the development system, all right? Especially as you're starting to line up for S4. It's more important than ever that you modernize your code and you secure the code. We don't do that out of the box, of course, but we partner with the best. We're also at this point running the ABAP test cockpit, and this is where I think you have an opportunity to adjust the culture. Okay. Also, we can trigger the Tricentis, or I should say, the SAP Change Impact Analysis by Tricentis. We've had an integration with Live Compare for well over 10 years. It was the first we've done. Quite a few customers using it. It gives the developers the capability to understand the impact of what they're doing. They can then minimize the impact, or they can at least be aware of what needs to be tested. You can do some risk-based testing and understand the consequences before you leave the dev system. Dynamic and conditional approvals. So we can add whatever approvals are required. Sensitive objects, things that touch sensitive tables like payroll, we might want to get an additional approval. All right. We can also add additional approvals for the ABAP test cockpit. And this is an area we're investing in. We want to make it as clean and easy to use as possible. We audit what's going on, and we give the framework for organizations to decide how they want to process different ATC variants. If you want to start demanding a higher threshold for non-acceptance of S4-ready code, we can start doing that. We can gate it. We can turn it off, completely disallow it, or we can make it a warning where people need to find an approver who's authorized to allow bad quality code to progress. Clean core. We have customers using it today. You can come by our booth, speak to my colleague, find out who we used to work for, but this large organization, if it's not clean core, it needs VP approval to be able to progress, and that's happening right in the dev system, okay? There are cases where you need to make exceptions. Emergencies happen, you need to be able to move. The important thing is having the controls, governance, and auditability for how it got there. This is how you can go ahead and start improving the culture and owning your own. I would also challenge organizations, start getting unit test coverage built in. Now's the time to do it. You're changing the code, get it done. It's a good time to invest. Finally, we trigger a migration to QA. Okay, our policy is let the developers do it. All right, basis people. How often do you see a failed migration and you go, the syntax wasn't going to work? You forgot the data dictionary definitions. This doesn't work because the development wasn't done properly. Okay, it's embarrassing for developers. Embarrassing might be the wrong word, but it's time-consuming. It's back and forth between people responsible for different things. If you give the developers the capability, they give it a go, it doesn't work, they get on, they figure out why it didn't work, and they own that change through to delivery and successful deployment to QA. At this point, we can also start preparing for an automated retrofit, and of course, we're analyzing the transport return code. Right. Unusual to use batch jobs for QA, but it is an option. Some organizations do it. And of course, if you want to use TOCs, that's perfectly available. Now, migration fails, all right? Pro tip, I kind of just blew it before, but a change shouldn't be considered fully done until it can be deployed. If it's not going to deploy to QA, it's probably not going to deploy to production. So make sure it's deployable, and then the developer can be off the hook. If it fails, send it back automatically to the developer, send them through the workflow process again to make sure it's a quality change. If it's successful, yay, congratulations. The developer's off the hook. They've done their job. That feature, from their perspective, they've delivered it. It's now ready for deployment and testing. Okay? We hand the integration back off to Cloud ALM at this point, and the feature can complete the deployment. And of course, if we need to, we can trigger the Tricentis, or I should say the SAP continuous testing by Tricentis. We can trigger that integration. And we have a lot of customers using this, and they have been for quite a while. So that's ready to go. So hopefully that was a good understanding of how we're helping to append and enhance the capabilities of the feature. So let's get into the second challenge. It's the automatic retrofitting. Okay, so why retrofit with RevTrak? Okay, we can do it today. It's a mature solution. We utilize capabilities and an end-to-end solution that actually maximizes the retrofit likelihood of success. Okay, we're going to be able to get you more retrofits because of how the solution works end-to-end. And then, of course, what we're doing is guaranteeing the traceability through SAP Cloud ALM. I do believe this is the best immediate use case. Organizations should be able to get this up and running with a Cloud ALM traceability to the feature. 5 days, realistically, with somebody who's willing to commit the time and get it done, and one of our consultants to assist. This also won us the Almathon Demo Jam at Bangalore 2 months ago. So this was what we presented, and we got the Audience Choice Award. So ready to go, and a good use case. I'll dive into this a bit more. What we're doing, RevTrak's controlling that ECC change. As it goes to production, we then consider it for reapplication. While it's being considered for reapplication, we automatically create a feature. We put it in specification. Then using RevTrak, we determine whether we want to allow the retrofit. We do all the suitability checks, all of that. Once the retrofit has gone in and the change has been successfully delivered, whether it's automatic or manually, that's when we update the the feature to the status of deployed as well. This is not a pretty diagram. My marketing team might not be happy, but it's clear as to what's going on. So from a deployment perspective, okay, the first step, we create awareness of object overwrites, both in the target system and down the path for ECC. Then on the blue, we do object sequence downgrades. We keep that in check the whole way through as we're deploying the change across the landscape. We then trigger a clone in the red, okay, and that's after we go to production to determine if we want this change to be going into the retrofitting environment or not. We use our cross-system object override and downgrade detection to try and validate, is this suitable for the target system or not? And then we can either automatically reapply the transports, or if a manual change is required, we can then help with the delivery of that change along with the S4 project, okay? You're not gonna miss anything if you're using this approach. Every change will be accounted for. On the readiness checks, this is more the suitability analysis that we're doing, and it happens in parallel with the previous slide. We start off running a remote ATC straight out of the development system and have a look as to whether the code's ready for S4. If it's not, we can put it in a separate transport that'll never go to S4. If it is ready, we're gonna start making sure that it's of a high enough quality as we progress to make sure it can go in. We then improve the code through the production landscape on the ECC track and start getting ready for that retrofit process again with our clone. And then once again, we run an ATC readiness check. We drop transports that are not suitable, and then we start applying the transports that are suitable. If there's anything that's broken because part of the functionality was able to be imported and another part was not suitable for import, we then have a work order that can be used to roll it out along with the rest of the project. Cool, so this is roughly what the demo looked like. Here's a RevTrak request. In this case, it's already gone to the ECC production instance. Once somebody, and you can see it's got a SAP Cloud ALM reference. We're referencing the feature that we created automatically. Here's the feature on the transport reference. It's pointing back to the RevTrak request and sort of say that's what's going to be responsible for deploying this change. We're just tracking at this point the S4 changes because we want everything that goes into S4 to be traceable in Cloud ALM for that blueprint mapping. Once we finish up the RevTrak requests, we then automatically update our feature to a status of deployed, and then you've got a complete understanding of what went into the system along with tracking down to the object level through RevTrak. So hopefully that's understood. This is ready to go. I've got a much better demo of this, and it's on loop at our booth, so feel free to have a look at that. I'm happy to walk you through it. And then we've got, if you get some content pack, we can show you this more in a real-life situation with actual hands-on coding and see the S4 readiness checks and dropping the transports in flight. Cool, so the third point, and I'm running ahead of time, which is lovely. This is sort of what we've been in business for 27 years, is just taking care of complicated environments. Okay, we have, yes, been an alternative to Charm, but organizations choose us for different reasons, and generally the more complexity that exists, or the more governance, the more just our landscape's adjusted too frequently, things like this. We've got a setup that makes it very dynamic. We can pull things in, take them out, minimal configuration effort. We focus very much on automation, and we focus very much on flexibility. So we don't necessarily dictate what a change process should look like. We allow for the customer to influence that, and they can update it often without even engaging with us at a regular basis. So that's done internally. Our values have always been to help organizations deliver faster, safer, and better applications, improving the volume, velocity, and quality of change delivery. We ultimately are also here to keep your production system safe. The end-to-end solution is designed to keep you guys safe, keep production up, minimize those P1s. Nobody likes those. And then, of course, through our modernization and innovation efforts, we're really looking at RevTrack as a bit of a platform for DevOps for SAP. Okay, we control the CI/CD layer. All right, we've got the CI. I emphasized that a little bit with the code controlling solution with approach number 1. But then the CD, of course, can be happening through Cloud ALM in the feature, or if you've got some crazy CD requirements, which I will go into a few, then we can help you out with that by building out a full CI/CD for SAP. Okay, then you can also start integrations with other solutions, best of breeds, keep Cloud ALM up to date with all the activity that's happening under the cover. And I'll say the major things that have taken us to the next level are a bidirectional integration with the SAP Cloud ALM solution suite. And then, of course, something we're starting to look at is building out a catch-up utility as well. So customers who are using RevTrack today, and they've started doing a lot of investment in the S4 systems, they might want that richness of understanding everything that's gone into that environment. So the batch utility will allow for us to then print out all the features, even if we've done this over the last 2 years already. So they can find what's gone in the S4 system and have the traceability. So the dashboards at the Cloud ALM layer are lighting up, and they get that value from the blueprint mapping. So this doesn't necessarily have to be utilized in this fashion, okay? But for some of the RevTrack customers, because I know their landscapes, they'd probably look to not necessarily use the feature, maybe update the feature so that they get the dashboards and the data lit up, but they would likely run the integration off of the requirement, okay? And from this, we run end-to-end change deployment and simply keep the requirement in charge of the RevTrack and gating things to determine whether it should be able to move, but at the same time then printing across to that feature to keep it up to date. I'll jump into this, and these are really where the types of environments that could really get some benefit out of this. So firstly, nobody believes me when I say this. I promise you, for about 3 years, a very large organization decided N+6 was the right approach, okay? Why? Because they just couldn't risk having conflicts and working in parallel. Now, the ironic thing is they were able to rationalize that heavily when they started using RevTrack's solution properly, because we have the right tools to make sure you can work in parallel and bring that visible so projects become easier. Okay, you can tackle more work in the same space, in the same unit, touching the same code when you have the right solution in place. So this is a more basic, just an N+2, okay? But even a utilities company in Melbourne, up until recently, they were using, a BAU. Then they had sort of minor changes. They had a monthly drop, quarterly, and then extra large projects. And of course, you need to cascade these changes down into each subsequent environment. And as they go live, obviously be able to project that into the BAU environment. Works very easily. And again, I'll emphasize, we can make sure every single feature is at least traceable to SAP Cloud ALM. Air gap environments. Don't do this. But if you have to, you know who you are. Generally, it's military. So they're creating a DMZ. There's a wall. We do not let these servers talk. One is an intranet, where you have to have probably a high level of security access to get into this environment. And the other one is more on the internet, where the development and sometimes external partners and things can help them to build out the solutions. We can work with this environment. We've got a few reference sites. They might not want you to talk to you. They're a bit secretive, most of these, but we certainly support the solution. And again, what we can guarantee is the traceability and clarity. When something is deployed, even though it's on the secret intranet over here, we can get it up to Cloud ALM so that you've got the visibility in Cloud ALM. Global template protection. We've been doing this for years, and it seems to have become a little bit hot right now, and I suspect it's because of consolidation projects where organizations might have had 5 or 6 different environments operating Europe, for example, and then they go, no, we should get this into just one. So maybe region 1 is EMEA, region 2, Americas, region 3, APAC. But then, of course, what they want is some global control of what's going on in these systems, a bit of a template that can come in and provide almost like a set of guidelines, practices, branding, things like that, that are uniform across the world. And then, of course, they can deal with the localized requirements of managing each region within the unique landscapes. It needs the right tools, it needs visibility, it needs managing, a place to manage the objects to make sure that people aren't overlapping object ranges if they can help it. Create healthy practices to divide object ranges where possible. Okay, and the insight to be able to understand something that's coming down the pipe from the global team, minimizing the impact, and ultimately minimizing the rework. Okay, because if you don't get it right, it's a lot of rework, it's a lot of extra effort unnecessarily. So we do that, and again, we guarantee the traceability up into SAP Cloud ALM. Consolidation projects. Okay, this is happening amongst our customer base. They're sort of taking a few different functions, maybe it's a few different regions as well. It's sometimes even different technology solutions, and they're sort of consolidating everything. The business requirements is now being progressed and shifted into S4 as they do their digital transformation. This stuff's easy with RevTrack. You need the right tools at the right time, and of course, if you're doing this, you should have traceability into SAP Cloud ALM. 5+ tier landscapes. We've got a few customers that do that. What they use them for, it depends who they are and what they need, but we certainly cover this. So SAP Cloud ALM is 3 and has support for 4 tiers. If you need to go beyond 4 tiers, we've got you covered. 5+, I think we've got customers who are sitting, I don't know, I guess about 12, the biggest one I can recall. Sometimes they've got parallel tracks for where things need to go. We manage that easily, and of course, traceability to Cloud ALM. Temporary and conditional systems. This is probably something most people have seen. Performance testing, very important for utilities companies. All right, imagine it's that time of the year, or the quarter, I should say. They're about to run 7 million invoices for all their various accounts based on metered usage. That's a pretty big task for the system to manage, all right? When you're impacting those particular areas, you do need to do performance testing because you can't kill your performance when you go live with something. So performance testing is not for every change as well, because it would make it unaffordable to progress change across these landscapes. So you need to be able to be selective. What are we going to send to performance testing? Can we control which objects and changes should go to performance testing? Okay, it's not everything. That's expensive. So very selective, the right things do go to performance testing, and you make sure that it's not going to blow out your production at the most important time of the month. That's a use case. If you understand of another use for a conditional system, there's a few I can think of. Easy to support with RevTrack, okay? Relatively out of the box, a little bit of configuration here and there gets the job done. The other one, the second example, a system outage due to a refresh. All right, maybe you're just taking pre-production down for a few months because it's expensive to operate. All right, you need to be able to work around it. Maybe you need to queue your changes so that when it becomes available again, everything goes in the same sequence that you sent it to production. Okay, very easy to manage with RevTrack. Out of the box, relatively, some tweaks here and there, depending on how you use the environment. But this works, and again, traceability back to SAP Cloud ALM. These ones don't have diagrams, but cross-landscape distribution. Okay, there's a few use cases I can think of. Big one that keeps coming across my desk at the moment is master data governance. You've got certain objects you need to go through MDG. Okay, we split it out from the transport in the S4 or the ECC system. We get it onto a transport that's going to navigate the MDG track. We do it as a single unit of work in parallel and make sure that by the time you deliver the change to production, it's gone to both environments. All right, cross-landscape distribution was often one of the mechanisms to help control this, and possibly the familiar language. Works great, and we've got that available for use. Finally, GRC. I was speaking to a customer with 240 unique approval roles, running it out of GRC and controlling the RevTrack approvals. That's available today. So folks, I think I'm on time. Chris Drake, we have a booth out in one of those areas. Please come talk to me if we're talking about anything that can help you out, and thank you for your time and attention. Cheers.